Happy Halloween, ninjas! Welcome back to Friday Night Arcade. This week on Buried Treasures, I'm taking a look at the lesser-known horror game Clock Tower. This game was developed by Human Entertainment and released on the Super Famicom in 1995. This game only saw a release in Japan on the Famicom. It was never released in the US, so a lot of people probably ended up missing this one, which is a shame because it's definitely worth a look. An English fan translation does thankfully exist. Clock Tower is a point-and-click 2D adventure game where you play as Jennifer Simpson, one of several orphans adopted by a wealthy recluse named Simon Burrows. A woman named Mrs. Mary takes the children to the mansion where Mr. Burrows lives. Mary disappears shortly after the women all sit down for dinner. When Jennifer goes to figure out where Mary went, she returns to find all of the orphans missing, and then one of them gets murdered right in front of her eyes. Jennifer then gets attacked by a mysterious murderer with a giant pair of scissors, and your only recourse is to run away. You then spend the rest of the game exploring the mansion, trying to figure out what happened to the other orphans, as well as Miss Mary, all the while desperately trying to avoid the homicidal Scissor Man. To say much else about the story would be a disservice to the game, but there are multiple paths for the story to take depending on how you proceed through the mansion, so the game lends itself to multiple playthroughs. The gameplay is fairly simple and straightforward. You control Jennifer by using a point-and-click interface. There are various objects or people that you can interact with. You'll find various items or clues along the way as you explore the mansion. One thing that I found interesting was that you don't really have a way to attack the Scissor Man if he gets too close. When Scissor Man shows up, the only thing that you can do is hide or run away. There's also a panic button. If you press B repeatedly, sometimes you can ward off his attack long enough to make a run for it. This actually reminds me of some modern survival horror games such as Alien Isolation or Amnesia: The Dark Descent. In both of those games, the only way to escape the monsters was to run, hide, and be as stealthy as possible. Clock Tower also incorporates a psychological panic mechanic. The picture in the corner will show you various colors depending on Jennifer's mental state. Blue means that she's rested and feeling okay about things, but red means that she's completely panicked and your chances of warding off Scissor Man's attacks in a panicked state are drastically reduced. She also tends to fall down more while running if she's panicked. Running also aggravates your psychological state, so it's best to try to only run if you have to and rest your character whenever you can. You could argue that the 2D graphics haven't aged well, but I felt like this game was a fantastic example of taking a simple concept and making it into something greater than the sum of its parts. Sure, the graphics are simple, but the Famicom's color palette is used in a fantastic way to create a truly sinister feeling as you explore the mansion. Rooms are dimly lit, and there is an imposing feeling of dread around every corner. When Scissor Man shows up, there were times where it legitimately gave me a jump scare. For example, in one scene I hid in this hayloft and Scissor Man left. I thought I had given him the slip, and then... You probably will die a lot in this game, and it does involve some trial and error, but it also has a fairly liberal continue and save system, so you never really feel frustrated with the situation. I also have to applaud the game's use of its limited sound effects. There is a soundtrack that is used sparingly, and it's quite effective. Other times, all you hear are the gentle sounds of Jennifer's footsteps as she explores the mansion. And honestly, that's just creepy. The game does have a few issues. The point-and-click interface is a little wonky on a Super Nintendo controller, and it would be cool if there was support for the Super NES mouse. And sometimes it's a little confusing deciphering where exactly you can and can't go in the mansion, since it's technically a 3D space, but you're operating in 2D. Honestly though, these little quirks are forgivable, especially when you consider the technological limitations of the hardware. The game is short. It could probably be beaten in a few hours or so, which feels about right. That's about the length of a horror movie. In fact, the game's director Hifumi Kono said that the game was intended to pay homage to one of his favorite horror directors, Dario Argento. In particular, the game borrows several elements from Argento's film Phenomena, right down to a resemblance between the lead characters. The game was also released on PlayStation, Windows, and, for some reason, the Wonder Swan. They also went on to produce sequels, and the crunch chronological sequence of these games is a little muddy. Human Entertainment actually went bankrupt in 2000, and the Clock Tower franchise was bought out by Capcom. Clock Tower is fairly pricey now on the Famicom, and although fan translations exist, you may have to ask yourself how much you're willing to pay for a reproduction cartridge. It's definitely worth a look though if you're in the mood for something scary and different this month, and I do recommend finding a way to check it out if you can. I really enjoyed playing through this, and it still amazes me what programmers came up with to accomplish something truly out of the ordinary for their respective systems. As always, thank you for stopping by and checking out the channel. If you enjoyed this, feel free to like the video, and you can also subscribe if you want to check out all of the rest of my retro gaming content. Hey, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.